Admiral James Harlan Voss had survived things that most people only see in movies. He had led some of the most dangerous military missions in the world. He had stood at the graves of his soldiers and spoken their names without his voice breaking. He had made decisions in the dark, under fire, with seconds to spare, and he had always found a way through. But on the morning of March 14th, at exactly 5:23 in the morning, his phone rang, and for the first time in 30 years, Admiral Voss did not know what to do. "Sir," the voice on the other end said carefully, "it's about Mara, his daughter, 24 years old, a second-year medical resident who studied harder than anyone he had ever known. The girl who used to fall asleep on his shoulder during long car rides. The only person in the world who still called him Daddy. She had been found unconscious in her apartment by her roommate. By the time the ambulance arrived, her brain had gone without enough oxygen for nearly 8 minutes. The doctors at Bethesda Naval Medical Center were waiting for him when he arrived, still wearing his military uniform, his coffee still in his hand. "She is stable," the doctor told him, "but she is not responding. We are watching and waiting." Admiral Voss walked into the room where his daughter lay. She was connected to machines that breathed for her, machines that measured her heartbeat, machines that beeped softly and steadily in the silence. She looked peaceful. She looked like she was simply sleeping, like she might open her eyes any second and smile at him. She did not open her eyes. 1 day passed, then 3, then 5, then 10. The doctor spoke to him in careful words, words full of numbers and percentages and possibilities. Chaplains came and sat beside him. His old military friends flew in from across the country and sat in the waiting room chairs without saying much, because sometimes the best thing a person can do is simply be present. But Mara did not wake up. On the 11th day, a nurse named Ruth Caldera arrived for the morning shift. She was 51 years old, small in size, with short silver hair and calm brown eyes. She moved through the hospital hallways the way experienced people move, without hurry, without wasted steps. She didn't talk much, but when she did, people listened. Not because she was loud, because every word she said seemed chosen with care. Before she became a civilian nurse, Ruth had spent 8 years working as a trauma nurse with the United States Army. She had worked in field hospitals in difficult places, in terrible conditions, keeping soldiers alive with very little equipment and a great deal of skill. She had seen things that changed her. She had also learned things that most nurses never get the chance to learn. When Ruth picked up Mara's medical file that first morning, she read it from the beginning. Not just the big notes, the doctor's reports, the test results, the medication charts. She also read the small notes, the little observations that nurses wrote in the margins, the things that didn't seem important enough to highlight, but were written down anyway. One line, written by a night shift nurse 4 days earlier, stopped her. Patient's left hand appeared to move slightly during family visit, possibly not voluntary, not repeated, not recorded as significant. Ruth read it again. Then she set the file down and walked into the room. She stood beside the bed for a long moment. She looked at Mara's face. She looked at the monitors. She looked at the left hand resting on the white blanket. Then she went to find Admiral Voss. She found him in the family waiting area, sitting in a chair near the window, his uniform jacket folded over the armrest, a paper cup of cold coffee in his hand. He looked like a man who had not slept properly in nearly 2 weeks. He looked like a man carrying something very heavy. Ruth sat down across from him. "I want to try something," she said, "but I need your help." He looked at her. "Who are you?" "My name is Ruth Caldera. I'm your daughter's nurse today. And I think she is closer to coming back than anyone realizes." She told him what she had seen in the notes. She told him about the hand. She watched his face carefully as she spoke. "What do you need from me?" he asked. Ruth leaned forward slightly. "I need you to talk to her." He frowned. "I've been talking to her every day." "Not the way I'm going to ask you to," Ruth said. "I don't want you to tell her that you love her. She already knows that. I don't want you to ask her to wake up. I want you to talk to her about something specific. Something small, something real, something that only the two of you would know." He was quiet for a moment. "Why?" Ruth thought about how to explain it simply. "When a brain goes through what Mara's brain went through," she said, "it doesn't stop working completely. It keeps processing things. It sorts through sounds and feelings and memories. Even when the person cannot respond, it is still listening, it is still searching. But it needs something to follow, something familiar, something it recognizes as true. She paused. Think of it like this. If you were lost in a dark forest, and someone called your name from far away, you would turn toward the sound. You would start walking toward it. That is what we are going to do for Mara. We are going to call her name, but not with words, with memories. Admiral Voss looked down at his coffee cup. What kind of memories? Small ones, Ruth said. Funny ones, embarrassing ones. The kind of memory that makes you feel like yourself again, not like a patient, not like someone who needs help, but like a specific person with a specific history. Tell her about a Tuesday morning. Tell her about something that went wrong. Tell her about something that made you laugh, even when you didn't want to. There was a long silence. Then Admiral Voss made a sound that was almost a laugh, almost. There was this one time, he said slowly, when she was 9 years old. Tell her, Ruth said. Not me, tell her. That same morning, Ruth began the second part of what she was doing. Every day at 7 o'clock exactly, she would come into the room, take Mara's left hand gently between both of hers, and apply a soft, steady pressure. Not a massage, not a squeeze, a rhythm. 2 seconds of gentle pressure, then 1 second of release. 2 seconds on, 1 second off. The same rhythm, every morning, at the same time. It was the rhythm of a resting heartbeat. We are reminding her body what calm feels like, Ruth explained to the attending physician one afternoon. He listened politely. He did not tell her to stop. He had been a doctor for 22 years, and he had learned that sometimes the things that couldn't be explained in a textbook were still worth trying. Ruth also asked the family for a few things from Mara's apartment. A book, a paperback novel that Mara had read 3 times, its cover soft and worn. A small bottle of lavender soap that Mara had used every day since her first year of college. And a photograph, a simple one, taken at the beach in San Diego. Mara was maybe 16 in the picture. She and her father were both squinting into the afternoon sun. The Admiral was in ordinary clothes, not his uniform. He was laughing. He looked, in that photograph, nothing like an admiral, and everything like a father. Ruth placed these things carefully around the room, not on display. Just present, just part of the air in that space. When people asked her what she was doing, she answered simply, "The brain in this kind of condition is not gone," she would say. "It is searching. We are giving it something to find." The days continued. Admiral Voss came every morning. He sat in the chair beside his daughter's bed. He talked. At first it felt strange, talking to someone who did not respond, telling stories to a still face and quiet hands. But Ruth had told him to keep going, so he kept going. He told Mara about the time she was 6 years old and convinced herself that the neighbor's cat understood English. He told her about the first time she ever beat him at chess, when she was 12, and how he had pretended to be surprised, even though he had seen it coming for 3 moves. He told her about the morning he drove 4 hours to visit her at college, and arrived to find her apartment completely rearranged, because she had decided at midnight that the furniture was in the wrong places. He told her about the dryer. It happened when Mara was 9. She had wanted to help her mother with the laundry. She had found his white dress uniform hanging in the closet, the one he wore for important ceremonies and official events, and she had quietly put it in the dryer to help get the wrinkles out. She had not known, of course, that dress uniforms cannot go in the dryer. When he found it the next morning, it had shrunk so significantly that it looked like it belonged to a much smaller man. He had to wear it that day. There was no choice. He had an official meeting at the Pentagon, and there was no time to get another uniform. He walked into that building in dress whites that were clearly the wrong size, and the security guard at the front door looked at him with an expression that lasted only 1 second before the man managed to make his face completely neutral again. The Admiral had never told anyone what happened next. He had stood in that lobby, perfectly straight, perfectly calm on the outside, and somewhere deep inside he had felt the most powerful urge to laugh that he had experienced in years. Not a polite laugh, a real one, the kind that comes from somewhere honest. He had not laughed. He had walked to his meeting and said nothing. But sitting beside his daughter's bed, 18 days after she had been brought into this hospital, he told her all of it, Every detail. The security guard's face. The feeling in his chest. The laughter he had kept locked inside for 15 years. "I almost laughed, Mara," he said quietly. "Because of you. Even when everything was serious and difficult, you always found a way to make something ridiculous happen. And I loved that about you. I love that about you." He stopped. His throat was tight. And then Mara's hand moved. Her fingers, slowly, with tremendous effort, the way a person moves when they are coming from somewhere very far away, curled around her father's hand. Not a twitch, not a reflex, a grip. Admiral Voss did not move. He did not breathe for a full 3 seconds. Ruth was at the nursing station just outside the room. She saw the monitor change. She was inside the door in 4 steps. She checked Mara's eyes with a small light. Both pupils responded, slowly but clearly. She pressed the call button for the attending physician. She checked the monitors. She noted the time. And then she stepped back and stood quietly by the wall. Because this moment did not belong to her. It belonged to a father and his daughter. And Ruth Caldera understood the difference between the moments that required a nurse and the moments that required privacy. Mara Voss did not wake up fully that day. Recovery from this kind of injury does not work the way it does in films, where a person opens their eyes and immediately knows where they are, and asks for water and smiles at everyone in the room. Real recovery is slower. It is harder. It is 2 steps forward and 1 step back, repeated many times over many weeks. There were days when Mara was confused, days when she reached for words and found the wrong ones, days when she became frustrated with herself in ways that broke everyone around her a little, because she had always been sharp and quick and confident, and now she had to fight for things that used to come easily. But she kept fighting. Ruth was not assigned to Mara's care after she moved out of the ICU, but she visited. She brought the worn paperback. She sat and talked about ordinary things, the weather, a recipe she had tried, a funny thing she had overheard in the hallway. She treated Mara not like a patient who needed encouragement, but like a person who deserved normal conversation. It was a small thing. It meant everything. 61 days after she was first brought in, Mara Voss walked out of Bethesda Naval Medical Center on her own. Her mother held one arm. Her father walked beside her, out of uniform for once. His eyes red at the edges, in a way he would not have allowed anyone to see 2 months earlier. Mara recovered fully over the following year. She returned to her medical residency. She changed her specialty. She chose neurology, the study of the brain, the study of consciousness, the study of how people come back from the places they get lost. She would later speak to a group of medical students about what she had learned, not as a patient, but as a doctor who had once been a patient. She talked about how the brain is not simply a switch that turns on and off. She talked about how consciousness exists in layers, how a person can be present in ways that cannot yet be measured by machines. She talked about the importance of reaching in, even when reaching in feels impossible. She talked about a quiet nurse who had known all of this before the science fully caught up. Admiral Voss retired from military service the following spring. On his final day in uniform, he asked for one small addition to his farewell ceremony. The request was granted without question. He asked that Ruth Caldera be given a seat in the front row. She wore plain clothes. She sat with her hands folded in her lap and watched the ceremony with the same steady calm she brought to everything. When the Admiral stepped to the front and spoke the names of the people who had shaped his life and career, her name was among them. He said it clearly. He looked directly at her when he said it. Ruth received it the way she received most things, without drama, without surprise, with a small nod and the faintest trace of a smile. She had known, from the moment she read that small note about a hand that moved, that Mara was going to come back. She had simply given her a thread to follow home,